Hi folks, and welcome to the start of our garden upgrade project. There's a lot going on at the moment and it's probably not wise to start this, but we're doing what we're doing. So we have spent kind of 3 years basically not being sure what to do with this back garden. We've done a few little bits and it's time to finally basically put in all of these raised beds, and the first thing we've got to do is cut them to size. And then hopefully once we've done that, it's a case of getting it all assembled. I think we've got all the right tools. You can see Jess has been diligently treating these. And then we're gonna have 2 nice big raised beds in here. And then it's a case of moving the things from this raised bed into the big ones, well, the things that we want to keep. Anyway, Jess is going to be the boss here. She's coming out soon. I don't know what she's doing at the moment, but we've got all these sweet peas. They're probably not going to survive. Some things aren't going to make it, some things are. And then once all this is out, then we can put in, there's kind of 4 little raised beds that we're going to put in here. This is the neighbour's fence. You might notice it's not painted and it's kind of coming down any day now. So we want this to kind of be modular and kind of not tied into the fence, no soil up against the fence or any of that kind of stuff. Just look at these cosmos have exploded recently, like absolutely amazing. You can see the garden is an absolute mess because we're kind of halfway through and there's just all this stuff that's hopefully ready to go into the raised beds. And what we're going to fill them with is a mixture of, well, this kind of semi-used compost, and there's loads of stuff up the back, all this kind of shredded stuff that we've been chipping up recently. And I can't wait. Now, I did say I thought we had all the stuff, and we just had minor upset because I couldn't find the saw. Thankfully we did find one, but Jess was very upset because we thought the saw was still at the allotment. It is still at the allotment, but thankfully we got 2. This is the other stuff. This is what we're going to be lining it with as well, just some damp-proof membrane. I was chatting to Jessie from Plot 37 and she recommended that. And this is my little handsaw, and unfortunately, how can I remember where the adjuster is? It is really good, but it doesn't actually cut that deep, and when you're cutting sleepers, I do wish this was a bit deeper because you have to cut one side, spin it, and then cut the other, and it's very difficult to get that absolutely perfect. Now hopefully this should be straightforward, and even though we've got to do the turning, it will work okay. Now it is, in fact, quite a few days later. We had planned when I started to get all of those timbers cut, all of these sleepers cut in one session, but then we realised it was like 7:30 when we started, and we didn't want to upset the neighbours because this is quite loud. It's also quite awkward. It's not perfect for sleepers. I'll show you what I mean in a moment, but it's now bank holiday, and I think it's a really good chance for me to put a bit of time into getting all this sorted. This one is, ironically, one of the better ones. I guess I've got better as I've gone along. But pretty much all of these, where you've got to flip the timber, you've got a bit of a shelf. So maybe a little bit extra, but I'm going to get the sander out and give all of these a quick sand just so we've got a nice smooth surface. And then we've got to obviously treat all of these sawn timber edges because this is a new weakness for water to get in and potentially rot stuff. But I'm very pleased to say that these are all cut now, and you can see we've kind of been setting a few out, ready to get the shape. This is pretty much the size. It might be a bit hard to see because there's a load of other timbers on top, but there's going to be a long bed there. We set it out originally how we'd planned on paper, and it just didn't look quite right, so we've gone for a slightly different design. But so it's sort of slightly shorter that way, but wider, and it's really quite difficult working with sleepers because the actual timbers take up so much space, and you can end up with something that looks a bit ridiculous if it's too small. So there's going to be kind of 2 big ones there, and they're going to be too high, which is exciting. And then look at all these little ones. These are going to be the little squares that go down the side. But you can see some of this work is just so shoddy, and I can't really blame it. That's the worst one. Look at that one. That's one that I tried to fix after the fact. And yeah, when you try and put these kind of end to end, and you've got a big shelf like that, you end up with a pretty unsightly gap. So, oh, look at this. There's another one. He's butchered that, hasn't he? Absolutely terrible, JB. So yeah, a bit of a sand and a stain, and then we can actually start getting them together. And funnily enough, this is the easy part, just getting them kind of cut. And all of these small ones are going to be going over here. So we're gonna have to empty this first before we can put the sleepers in place. I'm gonna have to get rid of all of this kind of cheap pallet raised bed that I made for free. But to do that, we've obviously got to get a lot of these plants we want to transplant. Mainly the kind of annuals probably aren't gonna survive, but if there's perennials in here, we want to get those over into the big bed. And we're going to fill these big beds with lots of kind of chipped material that we've got, loads and loads of browns that will form kind of like a base layer. We do have a few builders bags behind me that are going to hopefully fill this up as well, but these are going to be too high, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do not have as much material as we first thought, but we'll see how it goes. Oh, balls. Can't see what I'm doing there, can you? Now with all of those kind of ends just kind of, they're a little bit smoother. I've taken off any really big edges that are just gonna create big gaps and stop these things coming together. But that's all done now, and I've treated all of these ends as well. So now it's just a case of drilling a few pilot holes and then using these kind of timber locks, or I don't know what you call them, but they've got a nice hex head on them. So they go into timber really nice and easy. And as you can see, under here I've already got a few done and it's starting to come together. The beds have taken shape. They're looking really good. I'm so pleased to have them. This is their final position. So we're in a nice central walkway with the garden, and this eventually, hopefully, will lead to the greenhouse. And just imagining this full of flowers, probably an arch of some kind in front of me. And it's just very, very good. They've come together pretty simply. We've gone for a little bit of an offset, which took a bit of calculation. Jess did all the workings out, so it looks really nice. You know, we've got, instead of the line going all the way down, a little bit of an offset. And you might be wondering why we went for sleepers as well, because sleepers can be a bit pricey. But the other main option for us were scaffolding boards. And scaffolding boards, we were looking about 15 quid for 2.4 meters. These were 20 pounds. We got quite a good deal on them. And so it just made sense, I think, for us to spend a little bit extra for that extra durability. And you might notice as well, the inside here isn't treated. And that's because if we do decide to grow any food in any of these, we thought best not to have that chemical preservative in contact with the soil. So what we are going to do is line these with damp-proof membrane, just once again to make these as durable, last as long as possible, and as cost-effective as possible. The liner went on fairly easily. The slightly weird thing is, I did it yesterday when it was quite cold, and now today it's really warmed up. And it's all kind of stretched a bit, so it's all looking a bit saggy and strange. But you can see I've started filling, and I just wanted to show you what we're filling this with. The base layer is all of this kind of brown, rubbish, nasty stuff. This is various kind of chippings. We've got some sunflower stems and heads and that kind of thing. This has all just been run through a little garden chipper just to kind of make it start to break down. Some of it's breaking down already pretty quickly. And this is kind of like minor hugel culture, that kind of thing. You know, this will break down fairly quickly, hopefully. And as well, I've got some grass clippings that, you know, I've just mown the lawn and put this in there. And on this one, we've got all the brown chippings, but also some soil. So this is kind of subsoily stuff, which has been taken from the wildlife pond. So you can see how overgrown this is at the moment, but there's actually a really good pond in there. And when I kind of dug that out, I've put a lot of the material to one side, and also a big pile of it there. So I can just kind of dig that out and put it straight in these beds. And then it's going to be topped with a bit of compost that we've got at the back, like a bulk bag of compost that we got a long time ago, which we did fill in here. And some of this is going to go in these as well. So it's going to be a nice mix of stuff, and pretty much free for us. A little bit of subsoil, lots of this organic matter, and then a bit more kind of quality topsoil on top, maybe a little bit of manure and some bagged compost as well. I started this project, I've been really looking forward to the first time I could actually sit on this bed and do a little bit of video. But you can see we've got the subsoil in, it's almost half full, and actually we've got a pretty good problem, which is that I think I might have almost too much material. This builder's bag behind me is full of leaf mold. We were going to mix a bit of that in, and as well, I forgot there's another builder's bag, and this one is full of what is almost compost. It's like 90% composted brown material. So I think that's the next thing to go on. I've been sort of doing it in a bit of a layer, you know, the really not composted stuff, then a bit of the green stuff, then the subsoil. Now we're going to put some of the more composted stuff on, spent compost, a bit of manure, and that kind of thing. Now, goodness knows how long it's been since we started this project. I'll probably be putting little dates as we go along because we've been so busy with other things, but we have been trying to do bits and pieces where we can, and you can see Jess has started. Jess is the boss of the back garden, so this is kind of her dominion, as it were, and you can see she started planting out, which is so good to see. We've got some geraniums. I think there's some kind of geranium. There's begonias, dianthus. These are some little forget-me-nots, which thankfully we've rescued from the other bed. So I think they're going to look really cute because they always do really well in the garden. Loads of these kind of red salvias. This is all kind of for overwintering, so just a nice quick pop of colour that we can see from the house to make the beds look good. But now we are today moving on to the difficult bit, which is the side bed. And to be honest, I've been slightly drilling it and slightly putting it off, but we're going to give it a go. This is the side bed, and it's a bit of a shame that we've kind of got to rip this up. We're gonna, just because it's actually looking quite nice. It's gone through a few phases this year. We had a bit of a bad start to summer, but the sweet peas are out now. The nasturtiums have come back. They died off and they've come back. There's little pops of colour all over the place, but it's time for it to go. This was only sort of a temporary thing, and to be honest, we have this path that you can just see there that we absolutely hate. It is so ugly, so we're going to be trying to cover it and having kind of U shapes, kind of like a bed there, little gap, bed there, little gap, bed there, that sort of thing. Maybe with some roses or something going up the fence. So the difficult thing is that there's a lot of compost and material in here that we've got to get moving, but just got to do it, haven't we, and see how it goes. Down, 1 to go. It's actually the next morning. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. We just had a bit of a lie-in, well deserved, I think. This was, oh God, it was so hot yesterday. I think it was the heat that really stops it. This is south facing, so it's a real sun trap. And yeah, it was just exhausting, so much lifting of material. And I tell you what the time-consuming bit was. It was actually this, lining the beds with this stuff. It's just weirdly time-consuming, trying to get the corners looking relatively neat, and oh, it's just a bit of a pain, to be honest, but definitely worth it because it's going to make everything last so much longer. And it's really starting to get to that exciting stage where you see it's all coming together It's one of those things, we got these like a month ago. That's when we first ordered this timber. So it's been a long time in the making and the planning, and it's so good to see it come together. It still looks a bit of a mess, you know, we've got all these builders bags, but hopefully by the end of this video, it's gonna look much nicer, and we'll have a lovely blank canvas for next year. There's one more left to do behind me, and it's a little bit of a shame actually, because one of my favorite plants this year are some of the snapdragons. And when I started off, I said I was gonna have to bin loads of plants, but you can see I've been putting a few in the raised bed. I don't know if they're gonna survive, but we've got some little, I don't know what this is, some little purple things, some of the salvias, forget-me-nots, and the nasturtiums too. I couldn't really bear to just chuck them all in the compost, so I might be putting a few antirrhinums in here, but I'm not sure how well they're gonna survive. One of the really nice things has been being able to use some of the leaf mould that I harvested sort of from around the back of the house. We've got loads of kind of trees above a car park, and last year I went around like a bit of a madman sweeping up all these leaves and got them in a big builder's bag, and that is what is going in here now. It's sort of more of less for nutrients, more of like a biological boost. You know, those things are full of really healthy microbes to get your soil alive, and it's just full of worms as well, loads and loads of worms, which is just awesome to see. Folks, that it is actually done. This is one of those projects that has been in the making for probably years. You know, we've had a rough idea of what we might like to do with this garden for years and years. This was like a temporary solution. It wasn't really working. The issue with the raised bed really that it was too deep, you know, so we couldn't weed, we couldn't reach to the back of it. The whole reason we've done it like this is because it's nice and easy to get in here. You can weed this side, you can weed that side, full kind of access, and there's a little kind of patch of soil at the back you won't be able to see properly, but there's all sorts of things that we'll be able to plant in there as well, roses or sweet peas or things that are going to climb up and cover this fence so it doesn't look so bare. There's still lots and lots of work ahead, and these beds are going to settle an awful lot over winter. As you saw at the start, we put loads and loads of stuff, especially in these tall, these higher beds, that is going to break down and compost down. Loads of browns, loads of kind of grass clippings and all that kind of stuff that is going to add so much organic matter, moisture retention for the roots as they work their way down. But as it breaks down, all of this compost will sink down. And that's not a bad thing, because unfortunately, one of the things we were actually really looking forward to was using up this gigantic bag of soil. We had a mixture of kind of topsoil and compost, and one of the reasons I've been mixing so much kind of organic matter into the beds is because this stuff that we ordered a few years back is really quite kind of compacted. You know, I mean, stuff has grown in it fine, but I do think it will really benefit from a lot of organic matter, leaf mould and browns to compost down. And unfortunately, we've still got loads of it. The whole idea was we'd fill up those massive raised beds and be able to get rid of this, but it's a good problem to have, and we have managed to get rid of 2 other big bags of clippings and leaf mould. I'm very pleased to say that my work here is now done. I get to hand the reins over mostly to Jess. I mean, Jess really takes charge of all the growing of the flowers and that kind of thing. And there's a massive stack of flowers just off screen in pots and troughs and things that she needs to decide whether or not they're going to be overwintered, whether they're going to go in the beds, or if we've got to find somewhere else for them. I can't wait to see how this develops. Thank you ever so much for watching. Everyone who's watching right now is supporting projects like these, but an extra special thank you, of course, to all of my patrons and my Chili Pepper Tier patrons: Tony, Bill, Pam, Louise, Mel, Michael, Denise, and Socks in the Garden. Hopefully, I'll see you again in the next one, and hopefully we'll have some updates on how this has developed in the not too distant future.